Movavi. Movavi. Movavi.
So, welcome to the Daily Addict podcast, episode 2. I'm here with, most of you know him as Terry. I know him as Dad. He kind of jumped in at the last minute, so appreciate it. Dad, so tell me, it's a little different because you're not in recovery yourself, but kind of start off with kind of what your journey has been through my addiction, like through the start, the kind of time frame, kind of jump through that. Kind of what has your journey looked like as an Al-Anon, as somebody who has somebody, a loved one in recovery? Like, what does that look like to you, and what experience do you have with that prior to me?
So prior to you, I had a friend going through high school or I guess I had a friend going since about 6th grade. His name was Eric Olson. And his dad was an alcoholic, very severe alcoholic. And so I went to a lot of meetings with him.
Mhm.
He was part of the Al-Anon group.
Mhm.
And so I went to a lot of meetings with him and kind of was a support mechanism for him growing up. Shared a lot of his struggles and his battles with just the stuff that his dad was going through. And then it transitioned into dealing with his addictions. He was a heavy marijuana user along with alcohol, and his drug of choice was marijuana, but he was also a yes man. And so I did a lot, I went through a lot of that with him. And then I also went to several meetings and dealt with a lot of addictions with your uncle.
Yeah.
Eric. When I was with your mother, your uncle was in the height of his addiction.
Right.
And so I went to meetings with him and trying to support him and trying to help him through his struggles. Watched a marriage that he had with his, I think it was ended up being his second wife, Shelley, that, it caused a lot of heartache, did a lot of that. And I dated a gal whose mom was an addict also. And so, while we were together, I helped her through those struggles and stuff. So I had some background, I knew what the program was like. I've seen the 12 steps. I've seen the book. I've seen what meetings are like, sitting in the basement of a church.
Right.
And
we're surrounded by all the friends that you never thought you were going to make, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I guess Jelly Roll says it the best, sitting in a church basement, sweating your butt off because it's 95 degrees outside and about the same inside, and just listening to people's stories and, what their struggles were like, and, the mental health issues they were dealing with, or they were trying to suppress stuff that had happened in their childhood.
Right.
And they were using, alcohol and drugs to cope with life.
So, looking back at like your, obviously your friend Eric, my uncle, the girl you dated, stuff like that. So, when I came to you, or when things started to unravel in my addiction, did it hit a little differently being your son versus
Absolutely.
friends and family?
Uh,
Already, dude.
Yeah, it didn't take long. I never realized how bad your addiction was. I would say it really started coming to light a lot when you were married to your first wife.
Yeah.
And I was the one that, I got the phone call.
Right.
And I got the phone call at all hours, all days, and oh, Brandon's drunk and this happened, or Brandon's drunk and this happened. And I was the one that was called to come talk you off the ledge, basically.
Right.
I remember leaving the house at 11:30 at night and having to go out to your ex-in-law's place, and something had happened at the party you were at, and it got crazy.
I was off the rails.
And you were off the rails.
Yeah.
And
I remember that through third party.
Yeah.
recollection,
Yeah,
not through.
you were pretty, wasted. Um, and I just had to stand there and listen to you talk about it and talk about what had happened, and it was yeah, and, in reality, I guess, in a sense, started to set in that you had a problem. I didn't wanna believe it at first.
Mhm.
Um, I
I
mean,
didn't
one of
either.
yeah, yeah, most don't.
Yeah.
Most addicts don't, that's for sure. Um, I remember watching you after a party we had had at the house, and your wife had gone to bed, and there you were standing in my kitchen in the dark by yourself as, a few of us were still sitting in the living room, and you were drinking, the rest of or most of the rest of a bottle that we hadn't finished.
Yeah.
And you were just standing there. Didn't say a word. You didn't do anything. You were just literally standing there drinking. Uh, part of me, I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that you were struggling with it. I thought you could deal with it. I thought you could, work your way through it. And it was just I didn't realize how bad it was. I
Yeah.
guess I didn't realize it was a daily thing. I thought it was just a here and there.
Well, that was by design on my part, to be honest
Well,
with you.
sure.
You know?
I've learned over time that you were hiding it.
Yeah.
Uh, didn't want to come clean, which I get. Um,
Well, and you gotta, you look back at, like, it's interesting, you talk about my ex-wife, and, she was the only one, still to this day, to be honest with you, right, that saw every color,
yeah,
right? Saw
yeah,
every color of the rainbow, from the hangovers in the morning to the first drink in the afternoon. Because
yeah.
when I was with her, it was mostly in the afternoon, right?
Sure. It's after you got off work going
Yeah.
home.
Sometimes, it was chasing the dog, right? Trying to cure a hangover. I'd take a few
Yeah,
shots in the morning,
yeah,
to get myself right, right? But she was the one that saw the true colors. And for you, right, being my dude, you're the best man at my first wedding, right? Like,
right.
you're my best friend. And the thought, and I can only recall this now versus when I was in active addiction, is the thought of bringing shame to you was overwhelming, to the point of hiding my drinking, hiding the bottles in my boots and the bottles in my truck, right? I remember you told me when you sold the truck, you found 7 empty bottles in my truck,
Yeah,
8, something like that.
yeah. Lots of empties.
An astronomical amount of bottles to be hidden in a vehicle, but, um, the thought of coming clean to you was, there was no, I used to get so mad at Rebecca when she'd call you. So mad at her.
Right. Because then you had to admit that you
Right,
were drinking.
right.
And I guess that, in a sense, that hurt me in a sense
Mhm.
because I mean, I thought I thought there wasn't much you would hide from me, of anybody.
Right.
It's very well known that I'm the only one you fucking listen to.
Ain't that, it's still to this day,
Still to
that's
this
true
day,
out in
sober
and
or
out.
not.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yes,
say, that's
yes,
true to
yes,
anybody.
yes. I still get asked, "Hey, can you talk to Brandon?" Because they know
Right.
I'm the only one you listen to, and and I mean, I know. I mean, every kid goes through it. That it's hard to admit to your parent when you're doing something wrong. Um, it's hard to, it was a reality moment for me to have to realize that you had an addiction, that you were more than just what I was trying to believe,
Right.
because I didn't want to believe it. You
Right.
know,
Well, and I remember, I don't know if you would, but I remember one of our conversations when I first got clean on my own without going to rehab. I tried to get clean for, like, and I think I was sober, like, 30 days or something, like, not very long. But I remember our first conversation with that was like, "Well, dude, you just need to wait, right? And then maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years down the road, like, you can try it again, or a year
yeah,
or whatever."
yep,
Um, and I don't dig any deeper than what that conversation was, right? Because it was the same, I had the same feeling, right? When you
yeah,
look at addiction and you look at my recovery, I had the same feeling, like, "Oh, I'll take a break for a couple, a year or 6 months or 6 years, whatever, and I'll go back to it because I can drink like a gentleman." Well, then you open the big book, and, like, one of the first things in there is, like, you're defenseless against the first drink, right? And you've told me from, fuck, I was 16, 17 when I first started drinking, right? You told me from day one, it's like, dude, once you start, there's no turning it off for you.
Right.
There's no off button for
Right.
you. You can't take
Watching
one.
watching you drink was it was amazing. Or I shouldn't say amazing, but it was scary because it was one after the other after the other after the other. There was no like, okay, I've had two or three, I'm done. It was I'm just going to keep drinking until I'm blitzed, and then I'm going to want more.
Right.
And again, even watching you do that, I didn't want to believe it. I mean, I didn't want to believe you had a problem. I didn't want
Right.
to believe that there was something wrong. Because, like I've told you before, I honestly felt deep down like I had failed you as a dad
Yeah.
because you're my best friend too,
Yeah.
and I try very hard not to be the same dad that I had,
Right.
and I try not to be the same parent that I grew up with, because I, from a very young age, you know, realized that that's not what I wanted to be as far as when it came to being a parent,
Right.
and you know, you have that false. I guess I had that false sense of security that I was doing all the right things
Right.
when it came to guiding you and teaching you and you learning how to be an adult
Right.
and 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 you know you were you did all the other stuff, you work hard, you do all these things, and for them to be something that you can't deal with was like alcohol was hard for me because
Yeah.
like said, I felt like I failed you.
Yeah.
I felt like
Which and what's ironic about that is like I felt that same sense of shame and guilt reversed though. Like I felt like I failed you as a son, right? As your best friend because of the fact that you're right. You're absolutely right. There was something in my life that I couldn't take control. I can't control, right?
yep, yep,
And it took obviously a lot of time for me to realize like that is something I can't control, and I tried so hard to control it. I did. They list in the big book like all the different things. You try beer instead of liquor. You try wine instead of liquor. Or you try liquor instead of wine, or you try to drink only on Tuesdays or only on the weekends, and all this other shit, right? And I tried all of it, absolutely all of it. And then when it came to like really breaking down, you remember the time I went to IOP
hmm
with who should not be named, right?
yeah,
So when what's funny is I signed up for IOP thinking I don't have a problem because I've quit in the past, but maybe they can help me
hmm
control it better, right? Like that was my whole ideal behind it. But the realization came that I couldn't control it when I was sitting there drinking out of a hydro flask during the meetings. And the hydro flask wasn't water.
right.
And
It might have
so
been clear liquid, but it sure in the heck
right,
wasn't water.
right. And so that's when I think like the switch flipped, right? And that's what led me because at the time, right, I was about to have a baby. That was the whole reason I was going through IOP. I was about to bring another kid into this life. And my first kid, I don't want to say I failed her, right? But there was definitely times where I've not been the best father I could be due to my addiction, right? And I continue working on that daily to try to mend whatever problem that I know I have, but she doesn't see it. Um, but I was about to have another baby, and I made the realization in an IOP meeting on like Wednesday. That Thursday, so the day later, is when I sat in a car in the single car garage we had at a time with a bottle of Jack Daniels and let the car run in a single car garage. Obviously, you can connect the dots as to why I did that. And I remember I was crying the whole time. I couldn't stop crying. But then I got out after like 3.5 hours of just sitting there with the car running. I ran through like a quarter tank of gas because I just sat there. I finished the bottle. I was drunk as fuck. And then I get out of the car, I go downstairs into the house, and the girl I was with, uh, got mad at me for turning the lights on, had no idea what the hell was going on. Got mad at me for turning the lights on. And at that point, I felt so lost because here I am, a guy about to bring another baby into this world. I just made the realization that maybe, hey, I do have a fucking problem, right? To a deeper level than just, hey, let's see if I can get help, right? I just tried to off myself in the garage. And the girl I'm with doesn't even see that in
Right.
me.
She just gets mad at you for turning the lights on.
Right. Not that I blame her, right? Because I didn't go around and announce like that's what I
Right.
was doing. Hell,
Right.
I didn't even know that was what I was going to do until I was drunk. But to sit in that guilt and the shame of like, I can't even do that right. Like, what the fuck am I doing having another baby?
Right.
And yeah, that was the point where I was like, okay, I have a problem. But I just accepted it.
Yeah.
I just was like, this
You were
is
just
who I
like, all
am.
right, I'm an alcoholic. I'm done.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is who I am. And there was nothing in this world at that moment in my life that could change me. Like there was nothing. And I didn't know I was so lost at that point. Like and then everything happened, right? And going to rehab wasn't my idea. It was actually uncle's.
Yeah.
And I remember I called another girl, one a good friend of mine. She came over and she was the one that dropped me off at the detox center for the first time. And I relapsed as soon as I got out.
Yeah.
Literally the night I got out, I went to the store and bought another bottle.
Yeah.
And all what I the reason I tell you all these things is like there's so much that yeah, you do know, right? But like the whole time in my brain, like the shame and the guilt to coming to you was more than my addiction. Was more than me willing to get clean at that time. And to be honest, right? The first time I went to rehab, I wasn't the one to tell you.
Right.
I think my mother was.
Yeah. It's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only reason I told her, right, was because I was drunk and I told her I needed help. I didn't tell her what I was going to do. But
And that's the part that, again, you know, it, it tore me up because of the fact that you were too afraid to come to me. And I never thought, I guess I never realized, I never thought that I was, it made me feel like I was a bad dad or a mean dad
mhm.
because I felt like you were afraid that, dad's going to get mad at me. And I don't want that. So I'm just not going to be telling
Dude, I would rather you get pissed at me every single day than be disappointed in me one fucking time.
him. Fair enough. There is a difference.
Yeah. And that's I wasn't scared that you're going to be mad at me. It was that look and disappointment that I've only ever seen once in my entire life. And that was when I came through the doors after going to jail.
Yeah. And you look like a hobo.
Yeah, exactly. Like and that's a feeling that I never want to see or never want to have you feel about me. Whether you felt it in the past or not, I didn't see it. And that
Right.
was the biggest thing was like I didn't see that
Right.
coming from you.
Right.
So there's no fucking way I was going to like I wasn't going to have that conversation still drinking and have a conversation of like, "Dad, I can't function as a normal human being in my life." You know what I mean? Like I
Right.
can't go to work without being drunk or I can't operate day-to-day functions without having some form of alcohol in my system at any given point in the day.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. And again, I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know, I knew there was a problem, I guess, but I also, I guess, in the same selfish way, I didn't want to admit it.
Right, it was kind of I mean, I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but it was kinda like looking like with one blinder on.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure. There's nobody, no, no parent wants to think that there's something wrong with their child,
Right.
and so I just was like, well, when I get that phone call, I'll deal with it. I'll help him do whatever I need to do to talk you off the ledge or calm you down or whatever have you. And then once I knew you were good, I would just go home.
Right.
I don't think you and I ever had that conversation of, hey, there's something wrong. You need to go to rehab.
No.
I mean, I think that, you know, every time that you had decided to go to rehab, it was you had decided to go to rehab.
Right.
except for maybe after jail, and you came
It was
home.
kind of a mutual agreement at
I
that
think
point, I think,
yeah, I think it was like,
between you, me, and the county judge.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, and I think he had more weight in that conversation than I did,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. When you get a court order saying, "Hey, you gotta go to
Yeah,
this thing, and this is
yeah,
the only reason you can leave," it's yeah.
yeah, that was tough.
Well, no, and, like, what's crazy is I've told this to you multiple times, but I had an old timer tell me one time, right? It's the not yet. It's not the what ifs, it's the not yets, right?
Yeah,
And sitting in the jail cell, first of all, the first day was a blur. Like, Saturday into Sunday was a blur because I was still
but you were pretty drunk.
yeah. And so but that Monday, right, when they tell me, "Oh, you have a court hearing at 1 o'clock," I'm sitting in the jail cell. You can't leave, obviously. I couldn't even walk around. And as soon as I came to, like, you were the first person I wanted to call. I mean, I called you. I know I called you 4 or 5 times while I was sitting in booking,
At least,
at least. But, like, when I came coherent, right, like, you were the first person I wanted to call, and it's funny. So, you have to sign out for rec there, right? And so but in my layman's terms, right, rec just meant you gotta leave your jail cell, right? It wasn't
right,
outside at
right.
the
There
time.
was no, yeah,
Yeah, I didn't know the difference, right? Well, rec is, just so you know, the yard time. So you're 10 stories up downtown and there's a basketball that's deflated and you just walk around is essentially what it is. But I didn't know that when I signed the paper. I thought it was my time to leave my jail cell. And I had a CO yell at me because I left my jail cell and walked right to the phones. And he's like, "It's not your turn, or it's not that time, or whatever." I was like, "Dude, I'm just trying to call my dad." And he's like, "Well, too fucking bad. Get in line." And I was like, "Where are we going?" He's like, "We're outside." And I was like, I didn't know that." He's like, "Yep, too late to go back now." I was like, "Oh, okay." Mind you, it's January, I think. We're 10 stories up, and it's like 40 some degree. No, it's October. Excuse me.
October.
Duh.
Yeah,
It's October, right? We're 10 stories up. It's windy as fuck, raining. So cold. But it wasn't below the threshold of, like, them giving us a sweatshirt. So we're out there in just scrubs, and all I wanted to do was give you a fucking call, and then I realized, "Oh, fuck, I'm not gonna get a chance to call you until I'm out," because I was
yeah,
getting out the next day, and I was like, "Fuck." But at that point, what was running through my mind is like, "Dude, my dad's not gonna let me in the fucking house. There's no fucking way." I was looking at what I was wearing. Like, I was wearing my scrubs at the time, but when I got out, I was looking at what I was wearing. I was like, "This is really how I got arrested?" Like, what the? Because I don't remember. I remember bits and pieces, like flashbacks, but I don't remember the night by any means. And so I'm sitting there. I go through PTRS, pretrial release services. I go through that. I go downstairs. I call you from the county jail. And I knew when I walked out of my jail cell that I was getting something to drink. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew I was getting it. And hence why I was like, "No, dad, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out." What should have been a 20-minute conversation or 20-minute ride from there took me like an hour and 45.
yeah. It took you forever
Yeah.
because you
Um
didn't figure it out. Well, you did, I guess. You did up in my house, but you figured it out the wrong way.
Well, yeah, dude, I had no phone. I had no way of calling anybody. So I'm like, okay, if I go that direction, I know it's going to get me there eventually. And by the time I got to 122nd Burnside, because I hopped on the blue line, by the time I got to 122nd Burnside, I was like, okay, now I know where I'm at. But I knew I had to find, and it took me forever to find that map. Oh my god, it was a mess, dude. And I'm drinking fucking liquor, or not liquor, but I'm drinking a White Claw at 10:45 in the
Yeah,
morning.
super early in the morning.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just reliving that and, like, telling you those details, right? Or details that we've not talked about necessarily. And, yeah, that's what I mean, ultimately, the what ifs and not yets, right? Like, when I first walked into the rooms, I had the truck, I was married, I was I wasn't married, but I was in a committed relationship. I had a kid, I had the house, I had all these things, right? I had money in the bank, and I went in there for fear, like, fear of losing all of these things due to my drinking, right?
Right.
And so when I brought that up, that's when an old timer looked at me and was like, "Dude, it's not the what ifs, it's the not yets." And I looked at him and I brushed him off. I was like, "No fucking way, dude. You're wild. Like,
Right. Right.
I'm doing what I need to do, right? I'm taking control now."
Right. You're fixing it.
Right. Fast forward 4 years. Well, it's true as all can be, right? I should get that tattooed on my body because it's like it's true, right? And now I'm living at your house. I don't have a car, right? Because I'd given up the truck. I had to get rid of my dog. I didn't have a job. I had about a penny and a half to rub together. Like I had nothing. But I'll never forget, you told me right before I went into rehab, this is the time to restart your life.
Yep.
Like this is the time that you have a chance to do something that a lot of people don't do, but reset.
It was about as low of a point in your life that you could be. You literally had, I mean, lost everything. I had to go with you to your place where your mom's, where you were living. We had to pack your house in that day because you couldn't be around your mother.
Mhm.
And first thing I told you was go take a shower because you looked like a homeless person
Mhm.
and you needed to clean up, put some fresh clothes on. Uh, yeah, and yeah, you had nothing. I mean, yeah. I mean, you'd lost your daughter, you had lost everything, and
Mhm.
so yeah, it was the perfect time. If you were going to fix yourself, that was it. That was
Right.
that was when you needed to do it. And I shouldn't say fix yourself, but better yourself
Right. Right. I knew what you
because
meant.
yeah, yeah,
Well, and like so when I walked cuz you were out of town when all that went down, right?
no. I was at a Zach Brown concert.
That's what it was.
Yes,
You
and I
were
got
somewhere. I knew you were somewhere.
yes.
Yeah.
Cheris and I, your stepmom and I were at the Zach Brown concert,
Yeah.
and my phone started to blow up. Well, you know as well as I do, you can't answer a phone in a concert because you
Right.
can't hear anything.
Right.
So I get up, I go out to the main walkway at the Moda Center, and it's your mother calling about the fact that you're drunk and everything's going to hell in a handbasket.
Right.
And I said, well, I I just told her you're going to have to deal with it,
Right.
which,
Careful.
yeah, well, you and I both know how well she deals with shit, which is
Right.
not at all. She deflects it onto everybody else.
Right.
And she knew that I'm, you listen to me, you don't listen to nobody else. And
Right.
so it was easy for her to just give me the call to come deal with it again.
Right.
Well, I was not, I was,
Incapacitated.
well, I was an hour
Yeah.
away at best. I
Right.
mean, my truck wasn't anywhere close. We would have had to have left, gone up the street, got the truck, and got out to
Right.
where you were, which is Deep Gresham. I was an hour away. A lot can happen in an hour.
Right. A lot did
So
happen in
a
an
lot
hour.
did happen in that hour. Yes.
Right.
So I told her to deal with it. I hung up, went back in the concert. Didn't last very long. Went back up in the hallway talking to her again. And she said, well, I'm just going to call the cops. And at that point, I said, fine, do what you need to do.
Right.
So she did. Well, then the next phone call I get is the police officer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this part, but at that point, he offered, can we just take him to your house? And at first, I was going to let that happen.
Yeah.
But nobody was home, so it would have been just you in the
Right.
house. And what sits by my back door? A cart full of liquor.
Right.
And knowing you wouldn't have stopped drinking. You
Right.
would have just went for that cart and you just started drinking. And then making more and more phone calls and causing more and more. I mean, it would have just been mayhem.
Right. It would have spiraled
Yes.
more than it already
More than it
has.
already had. And I didn't
Right.
even know the whole story as to what had happened. I figured she just called the cops because she couldn't deal with you. So
Right.
she was just using them to help deal with you.
Right.
He said, well, if I can't take him to your house, I'm going to have to take him to jail. So in my head, I was hoping what his take you to jail was. He was just going to take you downtown, stick you in detox for 24 hours, let you sober up, and then just kick you to the curb, right?
Right.
Just let you go. And I thought at that point, I was just like, well, all right, fine. Then that's what you need to do. I hung up, went back in the concert, lasted about 30 seconds, started feeling about as guilty as a person can feel because I felt like, oh, what did I just do?
Right.
Went back out, tried to call his number back, didn't answer the phone. Tried to call again, didn't answer the phone. Tried to call a third time, Nope, didn't get an answer. So, okay, well,
What's
job's
done is done.
is done,
Yeah.
right? So we finished the concert. We get out of the concert, and that was about the time you started calling from the holding cell or whatever it
Yeah.
was.
Booking. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was getting the automated message, and then it was you.
Right.
And we talked a few times, and admittedly, I was a little upset with you, so I hung up on you
Yeah.
because you're a little hard to talk to when you're drunk.
I've been told.
Yes, yeah. There's a reason why you have a nickname of Brando
Right.
because the drunk Brandon is not Brandon.
Right.
Um, yeah, and my that was my hopes was that okay, he's just going to spend 24 hours detoxing and get out. Well, then I found out that wasn't the case,
Right.
and then I found out you were going to have to stay. Because I was hoping you would be able to keep your job, and if you got out on Sunday morning, none the wiser, because I knew you had already had a run in at your job and you had signed this agreement and all this stuff. Well, then I find out you're staying through Monday until you see the judge, and then you're not going to get out till probably Tuesday morning, which then I knew, oh shit, that means he's losing his job. Oh shit, what have I done now? I really felt like, oh my God, what did I do? But there was no turning back. We were done.
Yeah.
You were there.
Yeah. And honestly, like,
It was the longest weekend of my life. I'll tell you that
yeah.
much. I'm sure it was pretty long for you,
Yeah.
being in an orange jumpsuit and not having
It's blue and
blue
pink shirt.
and pink shirt. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's blue with the writing on the leg, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, it was a long weekend. I cried 46 times probably. And bless your stepmom's heart. She was just there. She just kind of helped me through it. I just waited patiently for that phone call on as soon as you were out.
Right.
Then I knew you were out. Then I knew we could, and then I knew you and I together could head on whatever we needed to do to fix it.
Right.
Found out from your real mom that, well, there's a risk, you can't be around her. You can't do this. You can't do that. Well, okay, now we got to do all these things
Right.
to fix that. And
Right.
and mind you, all weekend long while you're in jail, your mom's not home. So your
Right.
dog's there by himself. So we get that, and it was very hard for me to do that and say, take him to jail.
Yeah.
It was very, very hard. Again, you're my son. You're my best friend. You're my buddy. There's not much we don't do
Together. Right.
Right. Right. We have a lot of the same interests. We talk about all sorts of stuff. But in hindsight, I hoped that maybe
This was it.
that was it.
Yeah.
Maybe that was finally going to be the wake up call that you needed to get, or the reality that I got to fix myself. It was either that or you were going to go even worse because you were going to fall into such deep depression that
Right.
it might have gone the wrong way. And I knew that there was that chance too.
Yeah.
I'm glad it went the correct way, or
Right.
the way that I had hoped.
Right.
But
Well, so there was a couple things because I've never told you this part. I'm sure you've heard it,
yeah,
but I've never like openly like you and I talked about it, right? So obviously there was a couple things different because I've been to rehab 4 times at this point, right? This is
right.
my 4th trip in. Like I know the deal.
Well, you know
Let's
the
say,
game.
yeah,
You know what they want to hear. You know what they want you to do. You know the
yeah,
process.
yeah.
Doesn't matter what facility you're in. There's a little bit difference between
The two, but
but it's the same.
yeah, and so obviously jail was a big. I call that my launching pad, right? Like that's what kickstarted this whole process.
Yeah.
Because I mean, ultimately, right? My hands were tied, right?
Right.
Either I was going to go to rehab and get better, or like you said, I was going to fall back into depression and just sulk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just let things just spiral the way they've been spiraling for. At this point, you know what's scary is I had only relapsed for like 2.5 months at that point.
Yeah.
I'd started drinking White Claws, and that was the starting point of my demise. Was a couple White Claws a night. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, they were the big ones, right? But that was like the start of the ball.
Well, and the sad thing is, I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that that's what you were doing.
Right,
But I told myself, well, it's only a few.
right. And that's what it started out as. Like, truth wholeheartedly, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I got them because I like them. Like,
Which is disgusting, but okay.
it wasn't like, obviously, right, there's a subconscious part of me that was obviously looking to get a buzz, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's where I fell off, right? Is I got 3 one day, and after the 3rd one, I felt a little bit, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna," because as soon as I feel it, right? Again, goes back to that whole there's no off here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's just
So
a
as soon as I feel it, right, obviously, I'm gonna
chase it.
right. And then bought a bottle, and then the rest is history, right? So, jail, kind of my start launch pad, because either, again, one or the other.
Yeah.
So I went, and admittedly, right, I can say this now, is like, I didn't wanna be there. I didn't wanna be
No.
back in a rehab.
No.
I didn't wanna have to deal with it again, right? I didn't wanna have to make new friends and talk to people and tell people my feelings and all this bullshit that comes along with going to rehab, right? I didn't want that. But my counselor, coincidentally enough, named Shannon, pulled me into her office for our first counseling meeting and was like, "Look, I know you know every T to cross, every I to dot, every check to box, every box to check. I know you know that. I know you know the process here, but we're not doing that. So if you think this is how it's going to go, this is not how it's going to go. This is how it's going to go." And her first task was to or was for me to do a first step, right? That's how they do it every time. Is like, "Oh, we're going to talk about your first step and like what
Mhm.
made you unmanageable and stuff like that." But she told me a different way to do it. So instead of like trying to pinpoint exactly what parts and pieces were unmanageable and what parts and pieces were um, like I was powerless over, right? She just told me to start writing about my life leading up to my addiction, leading up to where we're at, all this stuff, right? Coincidentally, there's a lot of women involved in that time frame because fun fact, you told me when I was like a senior, maybe I was a junior, but that my two demises in high school where I found booze in women. You remember telling me that?
Yep.
So, obviously there's some women involved in the scope, right? But I just started typing. Well, that eventually turned into my first step. It was 11 pages long of all my stuff, which I read to you.
Yeah.
But that's not the main thing. Like they ask you what the difference was between now and then, right?
Right.
What the difference? What's going to be different this time than it was last time, and what's going to be this and that? Do you remember the phone call conversation? I mean, we talked all the time while I was in, but there was one night that I was talking to you, and I'm gonna get emotional now. And I don't even think you realize like what you said made such an impact on me, but you told me it wasn't my fault. And hearing that come from you, like it wasn't my fault, because until that point, I tried so hard to carry everything on my shoulders. And if something fell off, it was my fault. So, like my addiction, right? That's my fault. My failed job, that's my fault. My failed relationship, that's my fault. The relationship I have with my biological mother, that's my fault, right? I had all these things that were on me like it was my fault. And it also mixes into like the shame and guilt, right? Of the fear of talking to you and disappointing you and all these things, right? But you told me, and again, I don't even think you meant it in the way that I perceived it, but like you telling me that, like it wasn't my fault, was every word I needed to hear that I didn't know I needed. And I look back at that conversation and I'm like, okay, jail was my launching pad. The counselor was, kind of the guiding missile, right? But you were the rocket that took off. You know what I mean? Like the counselor navigated, jail kind of pushed the button, so to speak. The counselor navigated, but you were the rocket that boosted it. And so it's funny to me that it's a full circle moment in in my recovery because again, when I was in my addiction, like I was so scared to talk to you. I was so scared to tell you. But I made a joke on this in my last podcast too, is like you would be able to sniff if I sniffed a beer from across the room, you'd be like, You were around it, Brandon, every time.
Could
Never
al
failed.
could always tell.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah, never was. Yeah. And that and I think part of that was, growing up with, I have a sister who is an addict,
Mhm.
and yeah, I can always tell anytime she was under the influence. And I've always had that because it changes, right? When you get under the influence of stuff or start getting under the influence, things change about you as a person.
Right.
And that's what I pick up on. I pick up on your voice changes, the way you say things, the fact that you repeat yourself 46,012 times,
Right.
things
Right.
like that is a telltale sign for me that yeah,
You've been
you've had a
drinking.
few,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And hence why one of my relapse prevention, right, is like calling you every day because you hold me accountable and you would call it out if you even hinted at the fact. Um, but it's a full circle moment for me in my recovery versus my addiction because here I am so terrified to tell you, right? But then you tell me that thing of it wasn't my fault. And I was like, that's what I hold on to. I don't know if you know that, but like that's what I hold on to. Like whatever happens, and it's in the serenity prayer, right? It's like control the things you can, know the wisdom to know the difference, right? And like that, I correlate that with it wasn't my fault, right? Like what happens with Jason and my job and my career. Like, yes, I made decisions to guide me in that way, right? But his ultimate decision wasn't my fault.
yeah,
So what am I going to do to fix it? What am
yeah,
I going to do? What can I control in this very second? What can I do? And so I correlate those two things a lot in my life now, right? Of like, was it my fault? No. Okay, how can I fix it? Yes. Shit. Who do I have to talk to? What amends do I have to make? How do I make this better? But it all goes back to that
one sentence.
one phrase that you said incognito, like again, I don't think you meant it to have that much load, but like that's that is what I needed to hear. That's what makes this time so much different. Is now I have a better perception of who I am and what truly is my fault and what's not.
Yeah. What you can control and what you can't control.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. And I may not have used those words before, but we had conversations, especially the first time you had gone to rehab. You and I had talked, and I sympathized with you on how hard it was for you to stop or to try and stop drinking. And it's because of how old you were. You were 21 years old. You
Right.
know, that's what you do as a 21-year-old.
Right.
That's what everybody does as a
Right.
21-year-old.
Right.
You go to the bar, you hang out, you drink, you do all these things. It's a rite of passage as a young adult. Uh, that's just what you do. And I had also told you there's just some things that you can do and some things that you can't, and some people can have one or two beers and be fine, and some people can't. And you were just one of those ones that you just can't. You can't have just one or two. It's
Right.
10, 15, whatever it takes to get you to the feeling that you're chasing.
Which is funny because I don't know that feeling to this day.
Yeah.
Like I can't pinpoint exactly like what drunk was the best, right? There's been a lot, but like I don't know. Like the only thing that I know, right, is I was trying to it wasn't the feeling I was chasing. It was the feeling the not feeling that I wanted to
Yeah.
feel.
The escape.
Yeah. And I still struggle with that today. Like we
Sure.
talked yesterday.
Yeah.
Like what do you think that was for? Like it was escaping every other responsibility for the day.
Yeah.
Like I still struggle with that. I
Sure.
don't consume drugs and alcohol to get me there. I consume a lot of TV and videos, but I don't consume drugs and alcohol. You know what I mean? So it's the same concept. And I still to this very day, like I struggle with the escapism part of my addiction so much. It's insane.
Mm.
Because and what's scary is like it's not I don't know what it is. Like I don't know what I'm trying to run from, but there's something in my life that I'm always trying to run from and I don't know how to pinpoint it.
Mm.
And I can I can kind of decipher like what will make me kind of, for lack of a better term, like maximize my escapism, right? but I don't know what it is, right? Like, if I'm overwhelmed, if I'm stressed out, like, yes, that would ultimately
Those are easy ones.
right. But, like, the day to day, like, when I'm vegging out on the couch and somebody's talking to me and I'm not even in the same dimension as they are,
Right,
like,
right.
why? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And I don't know. I mean, I've obviously had a lot of therapy and talked to a lot of different counselors and stuff like that about a lot of different things in my life, but the day-to-day stuff I still struggle with every single day.
Sure. And you
And
always will.
yeah, and, it's funny is that's what Shalia told me literally today. We were talking about yesterday because
Yeah.
yesterday
A rough day.
it was a rough day. Like, I was having a hard fucking time,
Yeah.
and because it compounds things, right? So, like, I get those moods, I act the way I did yesterday, which not to put anybody to run their thoughts through fast. I sat on the couch all day yesterday, didn't do a goddamn thing for anything, and I watched a whole bunch of TV. Um, and so I was talking to Shalia, and when I do that, or when I'm on my phone just blindly scrolling, when I'm on my computer just blindly looking shit up, right? Um, there's a shame and guilt factor that comes along with me doing that because I'm trying to do a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
I'm trying to do a lot of different avenues and routes right now. And so there's a lot of shit I could be working on. And so when I get in those moods and there's literally nothing in the world that can drag me out of that feeling, then it's all of a sudden that shame and guilt comes on top. And it just makes me want to do it more. Right.
Yep.
And so,
'Cause you start feeling guilty of the fact that you didn't do shit.
right, right,
And then you're like, "Oh, I haven't done shit all day. What I'm worthless."
right. And then it's
And
like, oh, it's 6 o'clock. Well, it's too late to start anything
yeah,
now. Or it's
yeah,
7:30. No, it's too late now.
yeah.
Um,
And you go to bed feeling guilty because you didn't do anything all day.
right. And then you try to, for me, like, it's like I try to make up for it today. And like, you can't. Everything that you need to do in an 8 to 10 hour day is like you can't do it all.
Right,
You
right,
miss a day, you miss a day. Like there
right,
is what it is,
right.
right?
You gotta cut
Um,
your ties and move on.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But Shalia told me, like that's one of the thing I struggle with the most is like those that guilty feeling, that shameful feeling when I'm just still. I don't know how to be still yet.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
And she's like, "Well, you need to work on just being able to sit still." I was like, "Babe, I've been doing it 27 years and I still haven't figured it the fuck out." So,
Well, I've been doing it 55 years and I still have a problem.
yeah.
I have a hard time if I'm veg all day and don't do anything, and it
Right.
drives me nuts because I feel like I should be doing something, but
Right.
I'm not.
Right.
And here I am, and like you said, well, here it is. Now it's 5 o'clock. Well, I can't really go out and do this, or oh, this place is closed now, or whatever have
Right.
you. So
And
yeah,
I think it I mean, ultimately, I think it all boils back down to my addictive mindset, to a degree, right? It could be just my personality and who I am and maybe autism, ADHD and whatever else undiagnosed that I have, but it's incredible to me that that is what I look back at and I correlate those like if I okay, one day, right? Okay, that's fine. But that's like my relapse prevention, right? If I'm in that pattern for longer than like 4 or 5 days, idle hands are eventually going to lead me to a bottle
yeah,
because obviously what I'm doing is not helping me escape. So one day is great, but it scares me. You know what I
sure,
mean?
sure,
Like I'm okay to take one day, but if it rolled into today, and even today, like to be honest with you, I woke up this morning and I don't want to do anything. And when
yeah,
you texted me and you're like, "Hey, are we still doing the podcast tonight?" I almost told you no because I was like, I don't want to, right?
yeah.
I
Nope,
don't want to
not
get
feeling it.
up. I don't want to
Yeah,
set it up. I don't want to do, I don't want to drive the 4 minutes from my house. Like I don't want to do that. But I sat on it for a little bit and then I texted you. I was like, okay, yeah. Because if I don't do that, then it's not going to motivate me. Because if I had decided that we weren't going to do the podcast, well, yesterday was going to turn into today.
right.
And then it was just going to compound
Keep
because we couldn't do
steamrolling.
it Wednesday. Then Thursday comes around and it's like, no, I got to set an accountability factor now. And then that way I can start doing other things. And I got a lot accomplished today, right? I got insurance documents back. I got talked to my partners and stuff. We came up with a business name. We're going to file on Thursday. Like all these things came up, but it's just incredible. So, um, yeah, we kind of got off on a tangent there, but
Yeah.
so looking at my addiction, right?
Uh-huh.
Obviously, there's a lot of things that we can talk about. A lot of things we did talk about. But, like, what differences have you seen in me, not only, like, physically, but also, like, personality, my mindset, where I'm at? Like, what differences have you seen in me through my addiction? Because it's easy for me to look at it and be like, "Well, I don't really see this much difference," but outside of looking in, especially somebody as close as you are to me, like, what have you seen what is the most impactful thing that you've seen in my changes?
Well, just the fact that you're definitely more in the moment, um, and definitely more when you were drinking all the time and stuff. You were pretty checked out. You were There was a lot more of the I'm just gonna sit over here in the corner and scroll on my phone and not really being engaged with anything going on. There wasn't much. You didn't want to do a lot of stuff. You could tell your mindset wasn't your mind wasn't there. You were off in your own world.
Right.
And and looking back, it was probably a lot of it was you were just wanting to go get a bottle, and you wanted to feel that way, and so you know we missed the the Brandon that we all knew, uh, because you were you were struggling, you were going through all these things, and now there's definitely a different Brandon. You're more social, you're more a part of everything. Um, you're more willing to try and try and better yourself. You're continuously pushing yourself. Um, I mean, there's a lot of physical, or not physical, I should say, mentally. You're in a different mind space, and you can see it. You can see that you're a different person. Um,
And some would argue that this person's been there all along. I was just bottling it up.
you
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
We all knew who the real Brandon was,
Mhm.
and that you it wasn't you, and you were stuffing him down and hiding him, and not just you just weren't happy. Uh, you might have been appear to be happy on the outside, when you were married or when you had a girlfriend or whatever have you, but you could definitely tell. And then physically, obviously, we've looked at pictures and
Yeah.
seen what you looked like
Yeah.
when you were actively using, and you were pale and just looked rough,
Yeah.
really, really rough. When you broke your arm or your collarbone and you were in the sling and we were at the beach for your uncle's wedding. There's a picture of you and I standing next to each other and your arms in a sling and you got a hat on and you look rough,
Yeah.
and it was because you were deep into your addiction. You were,
And that
this
was right
was,
after Logan.
yeah,
Yeah.
this was the Brandon that we were having, that was a part of our lives at that moment. And, but you look at you now and you're a whole different person. Uh, you know, you don't, you don't look like you look happy. You look healthy. You've got color in your face. You've got, you put a little weight on, um,
Yeah.
things like that. When you were 170 pounds and pale white most of the time, and I'm not talking about when you were wrestling. Just outside of that.
Well, you know what's scary is the first time I checked into rehab, you know what my gown weight was?
Hmm.
146 pounds.
Yeah, that's what you wrestled in your freshman year of high school,
Yeah, as
which
a
is as
22-year-old
a
grown
22
man
year old grown man, right?
at 6 feet tall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You were yeah. You were not, because you weren't eating. You weren't. The only
No.
nourishment you were getting was whatever they made the alcohol with that you drank.
Mhm. And
Um,
whatever chaser I had sitting
and
next to
whatever
me.
chaser you had, right?
Yeah.
And you might once in a while get a 7-Eleven roller food or something stuffed in your mouth, but most of the time it wasn't that. It was sugar.
Especially at that point.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
rough. And yeah, and yeah, just you can see the difference. You can see the difference in the way you approach people, the way you talk to people, the way you're around people. You're a much more caring person because it's not all about you now. It's about it's you're more open and you're more engaged. And it's good to see.
Well, it's crazy is that's what, like, recovery has given me. Like, not saying I wasn't a careful guy,
Careful.
caring
Mhm.
guy back then, right? Because I always had a care spot in my heart. But like through recovery and seeing the different interactions that I see in recovery softball and AA meetings and all these other things and reading the big book and going through the steps and all these different things is like a lot of my principles of life are recovery related. I may
Yeah,
not run a perfect program, right? Or go to meetings every day or do all these things, right? But I really do try to live every day in the principles: honesty, integrity, have character, caring, open minded, willingness, all the things. Um, and to be honest, like it's kind of a double edged sword, if I'm being true, because I care so much sometimes that I'm like, whoa, hey, reel it back.
right,
And then
right,
there's other times where like I don't really care a lot. You know what I mean? Like I see situations and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Um, but I think it's all about finding that balance. And like the
sure.
situation I'm in now, right? It's always about finding a balance. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
In every aspect of my life. And I never knew that back then. I never knew that when I was drinking. I never knew that. Like I didn't know there could be balance in such a chaotic life.
yeah.
And speaking of chaotic life, like that's a very real conversation me and Shalia had when we first got together was like, I know myself in recovery now, but like my body was addicted to the chaos of what it was to be an addiction. You know what I mean?
Sure,
And not that she
sure,
ever had to deal with addiction, but like her life was a little chaotic, right?
sure.
And I was open and honest with her from the jump. I said, look, like if you're looking for chaos, like this is not your realm
Right,
because
right.
I'm trying to stay as far away in that avenue that I can. And what's funny is my life is still a little chaotic today, but it's chaos in a different realm. You know what I
Well,
mean?
right, but there's different levels of chaos, right?
Yeah.
We talk about it like there's those people that live in the what we like to call the high school chaos,
Right.
and then there's you always have chaos. There's always something,
Right.
you know. Like I'm 55, I still have some sort of chaos going on in my life, you know.
Right.
Uh, you were a big part of that chaos for many years, but
Right. And some
not
in some
not as much
avenues,
now. But
yeah, some avenues I can see.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's okay. We deal with it.
Yeah.
But
When I tell you my 32 different plans for what I wanna do, you're
yeah,
like, "Dude."
yeah, yeah. Reel it back. But
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But we all deal with it. It's just a matter of how you, like you said, you're past that high school stuff, right? You can keep that. You don't
Right.
need that part of your life.
Yeah, it drives me nuts hearing about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, and there's people that never get past that stage,
Mhm.
and so uh, you've gotten past that stage, and you're right. Your life was chaotic. I mean, heck, yeah, job, kid, wife, car payment, apartment, on and on and on and on and on and on and on.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was chaos. Now you have chaos, but now you know how to deal with it. And I
Right.
think now you look at things a little differently. And I think you know use rehab to help you through that and the things that you've learned
Yeah.
and the words that people have said to you and you've taken that to heart, and now you know how to deal with it a little bit
Yeah.
and prioritize and just kind of
Yeah, and I think, most of it is what I've learned to do, right, is what you said. I take suggestions from people a lot in my
mhm,
life, and 90% of them come from you, right? Um, and that has to do with the trust that we have, right? Because I
sure,
also have a hard time trusting
sure,
people in
absolutely,
different avenues,
absolutely,
but like you, I can trust, right? So when you give me a suggestion, when I was in, my active addiction, maybe 1 out of 10 I would actually use in my life, you know what I mean? The
absolutely.
other 9, I would just be like, "Yeah, whatever, dad," and just kinda move past it, right?
Yeah,
And a lot of
I knew a lot
mistakes.
of what I said just kind of bounced off, and you just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah, but now when you tell me something, like even in my situation that I'm in right now, trying to start a company and get my CCB and, like, all the things, right? That's why I asked you point blank, like, "What would you do?" Um, and no, am I gonna take that suggestion 100% at face value? No, I'm still gonna process it and dive it in my own realm, but I'm better at doing that. instead of
Mhm.
just brushing off the whole comment or the whole situation or whatever phrase or, whatever knowledge that you've had to pass to me, instead of brushing that whole thing off, it's like, no, I can use that maybe just in a different way. Or
Sure.
I can use that and maybe and just, add this to it or change this part of it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so I feel like that's a huge difference in my repertoire, I guess you could say, versus me being in active addiction. Because again, if I felt any part of that that wasn't directly directly involving me, right, or directly gonna affect me, I just brush it off. Be like, no, I'm not using that. Like that was
Right.
bullshit, right?
Right.
But now, and a wise man once told me, uncle, said every meeting is a great meeting if you're there to listen, if you're willing to listen.
Yeah.
And I can't find a more true statement in my entire life.
Absolutely.
Every single person you run into, whether it's you, whether it's, people here, whether it's business consultants, whether it's CEOs or, owners or lawyers or whatever, right? Or just random people on the street. If you're there and you were willing to listen to what they have to say, like something in that conversation, if it's a true conversation, right? Not, hey, how you doing? Great. Okay, good. But like a true conversation. I mean, I found that true to a guy in a gas station one time.
Mhm.
He was wearing a recovery sweatshirt and I made a comment about it. Now he's in my phone and we talk once a week
Yeah.
from pumping gas on
Right.
my
Right.
on
Just
my way to
happened to
work.
see him. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I commented, we had a great conversation, and now literally once a week, we talk to each other.
Sure.
And
Sure.
it was a willingness to do that. You know what I mean? And I think that's the if I had to ask that question about myself, I think that's the biggest thing that's changed about me is the willingness to do things or the willingness
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
take people's conversations and take them to
Well,
heart. You know what I mean?
going back to what we talked about earlier, when you were actively in your addiction, I was literally the only person you would listen,
Yeah.
and even then,
Right.
it was only so much,
Right.
and then it didn't it didn't go very much further,
Right.
right? But now that you're in recovery, like you just said, now I'm not the only source of your growth.
Right.
You're willing to you listen. And whether you use what they say or not, doesn't matter, but you listen. You
Right.
take for what you take what they say and you say, "Okay, can it can I apply this to my life? Can I apply this to what's going on in my situation?" When I was growing up, I was always gravitated towards an older generation of people. I did, I had obviously I had buddies in high school and things like that. But I always found myself talking to an older generation of people, and it was because I was seeking wisdom from them,
Yeah.
right? And I just, the younger my younger friends, 18, 19, 20 years old. I mean, yeah, we had a lot in common because it was basketball, broads, booze, and,
Right.
smoking cigarettes and doing that sort of shit, right? Going to the river, hanging out, being teenagers, being,
Right.
young
Young
kids.
adults. Yeah.
Right. Did they teach me anything? No, because there wasn't anything they didn't know that they knew that I didn't know.
Right.
So there was no enlightenment from some
Right.
19-year-old with a beer bottle in his hand or a cigarette in his hand. I mean, it
Right.
just wasn't there. So a lot of times I would always sit and talk with, that's why Papa J, right?
Right.
Guy's 20 years older, right? But him and I were very good friends for 30 plus years until he passed.
Right.
And it was because I could talk to him and he would, he had his wisdom that he knew. And there was other people that you never met that was a part of my life when I was growing up that were older, 10, 15, 20 years older than me. But I would seek wisdom, right?
Right.
Because like you said, not every meeting has a purpose or there's stuff in it.
Right.
Whether you use it or not is up to you,
Right.
and then, you just learn and
And I get that from you.
yeah,
I'm the same way.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
like, I don't have a lot of buddies that are my age,
right,
especially nowadays.
right,
But the reason for that is because, again, it goes back to like what, and this is a really selfish way of thinking, and I know this, and I'm working on it, but I can't help but shake it, right? Like, if you're not giving me something of value in my life, I'm not going to keep you around very long.
sure,
And it's not true in every realm, right? But there's a lot of truth to it. And I know, like I said, I can fully admit like that's a pretty selfish way of thinking. But in my time in my life, like now that I'm in recovery, now that I am sober, like, it's important to me that not every interaction, right? But the people around me, the people in my life, they're giving me something of value.
Yeah.
Because one of the guys that I follow, Gary Vaynerchuk, shout out for free. Um, he tells, he says it, and he a lot of people say this, but he's the one I gravitated towards. It's like the first 5 people in your circle are ultimately who you want to be. Like who you're aiming, like they're gonna have the most influence in your life to guide you wherever you want it to be, right?
Sure.
And like my circle is not even 5 people.
Amen.
You know what I mean?
I'm
Like
the same way.
yeah, I don't have 5 solid people in my life. Like I have
Right.
acquaintances and I have friends,
Sure. Sure.
but I don't have 5 solid people in my life that I
Sure.
I will like,
Same.
you know what I mean?
Same.
Like you, right? I'm not gonna name them all, but like you're in that circle.
Right.
So when I ask you, like the conversation we had yesterday or about the company or the business or
Sure.
this or that, right? Like it's coming from a place of like a more, I guess, a more deeper thought than just asking his dad, right? Like, yes,
Yeah.
there's an element of that, but it's deeper than that. It's like, hey, you're my best friend. I trust what you say. I trust how you say it. Tell me what the fuck I need to do here. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Right.
but in addiction, it wasn't that way.
No, absolutely not.
In addiction, I was like, sure, dad,
Because
whatever.
you didn't want to hear it.
And that was a huge part. You talked about denial at, like, the very beginning of this, right? That was a huge part for a long time, was the denial, and that's why coincidentally, right, that's why it's the first step in the 12 steps. It's like admitting you have a problem,
Yep.
your life's become unmanageable, and you're powerless over your addiction.
Right.
It took me the I would argue to say it took me until my last trip to rehab to really understand what that meant. You know what I
Really.
mean? Because when I first went in the rooms, like, yeah, I raised my hand. "Hi, I'm Brandon, I'm an alcoholic." Did it really have any meaning? Did it really have any weight behind it? My first meeting ever, 21 years old, walking into the room, like, sure, I said it, but did I mean it?
Right.
Mm,
What did it come? What place in the body did it come from? Did it come from your heart? Did it come from?
your
Oh,
brain or
or was it just
fine.
okay? This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what
Right.
I'm supposed to say. This is how I'm supposed to act. It's
Right.
like being in church.
Yep.
Supposed to act a
Exactly.
certain way. Supposed to be a
Yep.
certain thing. Supposed to say amen at the end of every prayer,
Right.
and
Right.
you know what I mean.
Well,
So it's
and
the same.
yeah, it's really cool to sit here and talk to you about these things because, like, yeah, we talk every day, but like and our conversations always guide us in whatever realm it wants to, right? We could start off one topic in the very first part of our conversation. Then 30 minutes in, I'm having a mental breakdown because you brought up something that I'm pissed about or I'm upset about. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, but I will say, like, in my recovery, like right now is a hard time for me.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like right now is a trying state that I'm in, right? But like not once have I looked for a bottle. Like not once have I looked at something to.
An excuse or a reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's parts of me that, look back and like, well, I could forget about this for just a second. You know what I mean? But it's not
Sure.
like, oh, I can
Sure.
get drunk about this. It's like I
Right.
know things that I can make myself forget about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And like it's not all fucking. The reason I brought this up is like it's not all fucking rainbows and unicorns because right now it's hard. Like I'm in a hard part
Sure. Sure.
right now.
Sure. I know you are.
But I know I can look back and I could call you, I could call uncle, I can call you know, mom, Cheris, I can call Chelsea, I can call these people to keep me accountable, but also look for that wisdom, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't know, I don't know where I'd be if it weren't for you. Like, and I've told you that multiple times, but like
Hmm.
really understanding like the gravity of that's a very true fucking statement. I moved in with you when I was 11 and I was a mess back then.
Hmm.
So imagine another 10, 20 years added on top of the mess that I was already dealing with. Like, I can't say I wouldn't have gone to jail because obviously I did that with living with you, but
Well,
uh,
to be fair, you weren't living with me. when you went to jail.
Yeah, that's true.
You lived with me after
Yeah,
you went to
yeah,
jail.
that's true. But no, I just they talk about like childhood traumas and whatever it can be, and it's scary. Like if you read some of the studies and shit, because again, that escapism thing, a lot of it has to do with like psychology and
Mhm.
what to grow business. And I look up so many random things, dude. You should see my Google search; it's insane. Um, but like they talk about a lot, like childhood trauma and what it was like growing up, and like all these repressed emotions and
Sure.
all these things. And no, I can't sit and pinpoint like this is what caused me to drink. You know what I mean? But I had a chaotic life growing up until I moved in with you, right? And there's a lot of that I don't remember. Like I've told you and Cheris both. Like I remember bits and pieces from my childhood, but I don't remember like what Chelsea can do. She's like, you remember when we were 3.5 years old and you were riding in the back of a wagon, and the next thing you know, you turn a corner, you fell out of it? No, dude, I have no idea. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have that luxury.
She has a pretty good memory of stuff. She remembers a lot.
Yeah, but what's funny about it is like they tie that like the lack of being able to recall those memories in early childhood to like the trauma childhood that you grew up
Sure.
in.
Sure.
And it's not like I was never essayed, I was never, any of those things, right? There was a lot of things that I won't put here.
Mhm.
Um, but like the physical and the emotional and stuff like that, like that was there. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Not by you. You spanked me one time in your entire life, ever. I don't know if you remember that time. I remember that just because I pissed you off. Um, but you know, and it's interesting. My old therapist that I saw for a couple months after I got out, he brought up like a lot of things, right? He does this EDR or whatever treatment, right? You basically look at a light and then it helps you recall like certain situations.
Mhm.
And like there was a couple moments in there where I was like, "Holy fucking what the hell?" You know what I mean? And I was like, "Dude, that didn't happen. Like you're lying." You know what I mean?
Right.
And he's like, "You said it."
Right. So how I'm not the one lying.
Yeah, he's
Right.
like,
Right.
but I was recalling this, and it's not, he doesn't say a word. He just, well, he does, but he doesn't like guide you into anything,
Right.
right? He just
Not leading
asks
you
you,
along.
yeah, he just
Right.
asks you a bunch of
Right.
questions, and then you're looking into this light, and something about the chemistry between you and the light just make you
Interesting.
recall things. It's a form of therapy that he uses, and it works, I will say. But like one of the examples, right? And I won't pinpoint who, right? You will be able to connect the dots, but there was one example where I'm literally on the top bunk of my bunk bed, right? And 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times getting wobbled on by a bell, and not just on the ass, just wherever it was landing, that's where it was hitting, right? And like you obviously like,
Not tough to figure it out since I never had a bunk bed at my
sh-
house.
yeah, but you know what I mean? Like those memories, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
like the memory of another recalled memory that he brought up was when I was in school, right? Mr. Foot.
Uh-huh.
I'd freaked out
Yep.
in school. I was in the bathroom, right? And I was screaming. I had anger issues growing up, right? So I was screaming, I was hitting my head against the wall, I was doing all these things, right? Well, this big 6'5" man, right, comes in from behind and grabs me and holds me down. And Ross was like, that's a traumatic moment.
Yeah.
When you call that a traumatic moment? I was like, no, dude, that's just what happened. He's like, no, that's not normal. Like, that's not a normal thing to happen in your
Right.
second, third grade years. Like,
Right.
and now I look at it, having a child in that grade, I'd probably kill somebody if I see that you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I would lose it if
Yeah.
that were to not just me, right? We all know my ex-wife. Like
Right. Right. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but like looking back and getting these memories recalled, it's like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
Like, and then compile all that shit, right? And then that phrase that you said when I was in rehab, like it wasn't your fault. Like it all kind of blended. And it was all like, well, fuck, no shit. Like there's an
Yeah.
issue. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And I don't And, like, there's still work that I need to do. Like, don't get me wrong on that front, right?
Right.
But, like, recovery gave me all that, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? Like, recovery gave me the chance to see and process these things versus when I was growing up, my anger issues got under control, right? Because A, I
Right.
moved in with you,
Yep.
but B, I found wrestling.
Yep.
We took that like, it got taken away, right? Didn't get taken away, but anyway, I didn't have that anymore, right? And I was still drinking while I was wrestling,
Right.
but it was at a much less quantity. Well, you take away that, that was my only source of, like, being able to get away, and then you take all the added stresses that I decided to put on myself at a very young age, right? The kid, the wife, the house,
Yeah.
the cars, like, all the
Yeah.
things, right? It's like, yeah, no wonder. That's a recipe for something to go wrong.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about, you talked about your your circle. You talked about who's in it,
Mhm.
and I told you a long time ago. I don't have a very big circle either.
Right.
I'm very very limited. And one of the people that are not in my circle
Mhm.
is my own mother.
Right.
It's coming up on 4 years that I have not spoken a word to my mother.
Right.
She just turned 83 on Sunday. I know that I don't have much time left with her being in this world. Okay.
Right.
But there's reasons why I don't talk to my mother.
Right.
And you look back at your childhood and the 800 different phone calls that I got from your biological mom because you and her would get into it. You and her would fight. You and her would yelling and screaming at each other. You know, she
Mhm.
want stuff like that. And I know that there was a lot of she caused a lot of trauma in you because of the way she deals with things and the way she talks to you and the way
Right.
she handles you. And because I didn't do anything special when you moved in. I just had you move in because I
Right.
got tired of getting that phone call and her saying, "I can't handle him. I can't deal with him.
Right.
Come deal with your son."
Right.
Well, all right. Fuck you. I'm done dealing with you, and my son's going to come live with me,
Right.
and you ain't saying shit.
Right.
And that was just kind of how it happened. It was just one day I'd had enough. And I didn't even tell Cheris that was my you lived 10 blocks away from me at that moment, and I made that decision in that 10 blocks.
Right.
That was after I'd gotten in the car and after I'd left
Right.
and started driving down the street that I was like, "You know what? I am done.
Right. This is it.
This is it." Right? And I
Right.
walked in the door, looked at you as you were sitting in the hallway screaming because I knew you were doing it just to piss your mother off. And I just looked at you and your eyes got real big because you realized that, oh shit, dad had just walked through the door.
Right.
And I told you, pack your shit. You were coming with me and get in the truck. And I told your mom, you're living with me. And that
Yeah.
was it. We're done. Right. But you and I didn't have episodes like that.
Right.
I never called her and said, "Hey, I can't handle him. I need you to, no, no."
Right. And there was
So
and there was not to be mistaken, right? There was times where I would get pissed and frustrated and have all
absolutely.
the feelings that I did have at my mom's house, right?
Yes.
But it boils back down to how was it handled?
Right.
You know what I mean?
How did we deal with the situation in
Right.
there? Right. And so you talk about those traumas of when you were young, okay, and that's how, no, and the way people fight or the way people argue or the
Right.
way people poke and my mother is the same way, and that's why I chose, but I had to wait until I was 51 years old
Right.
to finally walk away and say, you know what, you're not part of my circle anymore because I don't need you. I
Right.
don't need that.
Right.
And I know that that is kind of a decision that you have made when it comes to your mom
Right.
was I don't need it,
Right.
right? It's not good for you. It's not healthy for you.
Right.
And that's, you say your circle is small, and that's because that's the decision you have made with a lot of people
Yeah.
is I don't you don't give me anything.
Right.
And what you do give me is not healthy for me.
Right.
And it's the same for me. I mean, we have friends, they'll call, hey, you guys want to come over to this, that, and the other thing. I have no desire to go to their house because I don't want to go to a party where everybody's drinking and being drunk, and that's just not my thing, right?
Right.
You're not giving me anything by doing that,
Right.
and that's a valid point, right? You don't want that in your life. I don't, and it's different from before. Before your circle was drinking buddies. You
Yeah.
know?
Whoever was willing to open a bottle
Yeah,
and
yeah,
say, "Hey, what's up?" I
yeah,
was down.
yeah. You were buddies.
Yeah.
You'd have people over at your house, and what was the one thing that people came over to your house to do?
Right.
Drink.
Right.
You know. The night I bought my truck and came and showed you, what were you doing? Drinking with your buddy. You know.
Yeah. I don't remember that night.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, huh?
Yeah. No,
But it's the reality, right?
yeah.
But that was who your circle was,
Yeah. And
and so
and as cliche as it is, right? They tell you in rehab, like, "Oh, you got to change everything," and it's like it's not really cliche. Like
that's all. It's true.
it's pretty true.
I
Like
mean,
I didn't go back to the same job. I didn't go back to the same people. I didn't go back in the same circles. Like I didn't go.
yeah,
I still, dude. It took me a year to be able to drive out to Gresham.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
But one of the things when I quit smoking cigarettes was my doc told me, "You have to change
right,
things. You have to change the way you drive to work every day.
right,
You have to change those things." And I was like, "What?" And it didn't click
right,
until I was driving to work one day, and I turned the corner because I used to work in Troutdale, right? And I turned the corner off of 162nd at Stark
right,
and started around the corner. And the first thing I did was reach up to my pocket where I used to keep my cigarettes just to light a smoke because I knew I could light it there. And by the time I got to work, I was finished
right,
and I could walk in the door and I was
right,
done with my cigarette.
right.
And it was like, wow, reality moment. Yeah, you literally have to change. You do.
Yeah,
You have to change your way of thinking.
yeah. And it's, I mean, because my old employer before as I lost the job, really, they told me like, go to a long term facility, call me when you get out, you
Yeah,
can get your job back.
yeah,
I went to a long term facility, but I never called them back. And the reason for it was because I knew the writing was on the wall if I signed it.
yeah. If you went back, you were going to go back to the same old ways because
Right.
everybody there
Yeah. It was just the culture
that
of
was
what
all
it
your
was.
buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, it falls back into like, that's the people that I work around. Right.
Right, right.
Versus now in recovery, one of the first things I fucking tell my supervisors is like, hey, I'm in recovery. And not because I'm like, hey, watch what you're doing, but like, hey, hold me accountable. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like
right,
that's the biggest piece of the puzzle.
right.
My buddies at Terra Firma, you know how easy it was for me to relapse at Terra Firma?
Too easy.
So easy. Like
Yeah,
I had a supervisor one time. I shouldn't have said their name. I'll bleep it out. Um, I had a supervisor one time come to me in the morning and look at me and be like, "Hey, you probably shouldn't drive and you probably shouldn't talk to customers today." And the reason for that was because I was drinking.
mhm.
Um, but now, at the multitude of jobs, not multitude, the few jobs that I've had since I've been in recovery, everybody knows
Yeah,
right off the
right.
bat.
You're open and honest.
Yeah, everybody knows. Hey, I'm in recovery. I have X amount of days clean. Yada yada yada. And I'm an open book about it. I'm honest about it. I'm wearing a shirt that says I straight out of rehab. Like
Right, right,
I'm very blunt. I have a podcast to talk about it, right?
right.
Like I don't hide it from anybody. But I think that's the honesty that I needed because before I would either downplay it or just not tell you.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, I had a drinking problem. I got to figured out. I'm fine. Or just not fucking tell you.
Yeah, you
Not say a
just
word
you
to
would just
anybody.
hide it. Yeah,
Yeah, because I knew in the back of my brain, like that should have been a telltale sign of like, well, eventually I'm going to relapse then because I'm not being honest about it,
right,
right?
right,
I'm not being honest about the fact I just got out of rehab.
right,
I'm not being honest about the fact that I've landed in multiple psych wards for being too drunk in the street. Like, I'm not being honest about it.
right,
And but that's the biggest difference now. It's like I am honest. Like that's literally the first thing, second thing, right? Besides my name and where I come from.
right.
It's like the second thing I tell everybody in an interview. I don't give a shit if I'm in an interview to try to get the job because I also have the mindset like if you're not willing to hire me as who I am, then I don't belong here.
Right.
And that's part of the reason I turned down one of the jobs when I was looking for a job and I found charter. Part of the reason I turned that job down is because the first questions out of his mouth were about my tattoos and my nose ring. And I was like, well, yeah, the nose ring, okay, fine, I can deal with
It
that.
can go
Right.
away, but the tattoos can't really go away.
Right. But then I started thinking about it. I was like, well, dude, he already questioned who I am based off of how I look.
Right.
Like, what is he going to do when I start telling him like who I really am? You know what I mean? Versus charter, I walk in, the first thing I see is a guy with a tattoo of a spider on his head. Like, this is probably where I need to be. You know what I mean?
I belong here.
Yeah, but it's like it goes back to that honesty, and I did. I was honest with him in an email and I said, look, hey, I'm in recovery. Like, you're going to pull a background. Like, this is what it is. This is how it is. Hence why I can still be employed by school districts.
Right. 'Cause you're
Like,
straightforward with them.
yeah, I'm not hiding it, right? I'm not trying to hide or negate or dive into different things, right?
Sure.
I'm upfront. I'm honest. I tell them everything they want and what they probably don't want to hear, right? Like, that's how honest I am about it. Is like, this is a situation that happened. I felt the consequences. Like, this is what happened. Yes. Is it annoying to have to do that? 100%. But I feel like it's my responsibility to be that honest because A, who you're hiring is exactly who you're seeing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's no sugarcoating it.
Right. Right. No secret skeletons in the closet.
Yeah, there's nothing you're gonna come back to me and be like, "Well, we found this." Like, that's not gonna happen in my case. Like,
Right.
I'm gonna tell you about everything. And, that helped me get a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
That helped me get almost everyone, right? Um, is by being that honest. And with this, like, yeah, there's some things that even in this conversation, like, make me uncomfortable to talk about, but it's like, that's what this is about, right?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
this is meant for that, right? The unfiltered, or the unedited, the raw, like, this is what we talk about.
Yeah.
Because it all has to boil back down to recovery and sobriety and what it looks like, the honest truth behind it. And there's a lot of tough decisions that I had to make when I got out of rehab, right? My mother being
Sure.
one of them,
Sure.
right? When that was lifted where I could actually contact her, like, there was a part of me that was like, "Hell yeah." But then there was a part of me like, "That was the best year of my life." You know what I
Staying
mean?
away from her, right?
Yeah, and not I mean, I hope that one day she'll work what she needs to work and things will be where they're at, but again, that also boils back to being honest about my thing, and that's why coincidentally, I know when I'm gonna run into her, and not because she tells me,
Yeah.
but everybody else around me knows,
Right.
like, "Hey."
Just FYI, your
Yeah.
mom's gonna be there.
Yeah, and it's not like, you've seen us. I'm not rude. I'm not disrespectful in any way. I'm not trying to find something that's not there. Like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just not gonna have you in my circle.
Right.
I'm not gonna
There's
reach
no
out.
reason you can't be cordial, and there's no
Right.
reason you can't, be a decent human while she's around.
Right.
But you're not gonna go out of your way to
Right.
be around her. You're
Yeah.
not gonna go out of your way to have conversation with her.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's this, it's so crazy. I could talk about so many different things. Um, but I also don't want to be here till 9 o'clock tonight. But like there's, like when you make amends to people, right? It's like, are people in your life or people not in your life? And there's one amends that I've never made. Like, I'm for you, like, I have to do a living amends for you, right? Because there's a lot of shit that I've done in my life that I can't be like, oh, here's a lump sum of cash or here's this, right? There's a lot of things you, Cherish, Chelsea, Ronnie. There's people in my life that I just make a living amends to, and that's by showing up every day, right? Staying
Right.
clean one more day, showing up, being who I can be, helping out where I can, like that sort of thing, right? And I've come to accept that, right? Because I've said I'm sorry. We've talked, we've had an honest conversation, like, but there's also things like being as close as you are to me, like, I'm gonna fuck up and I'm gonna have to make amends for it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make mistakes. There's prime example, right? About the whole bankruptcy stuff, right?
Yeah.
Prime example.
Yeah.
Have to make an amends by it, right? And so, but with certain people, right? I haven't tried those things. I haven't done those things.
Right.
And I know I need to. I know eventually that it's gonna come to light and there's gonna be a time where because they say resentments are the biggest things that you hold, right? Those are the biggest key filters, and people that lose recovery is because resentment's held, right?
Okay.
And there's a total of like 3 people on that list that I have yet to make an amends to today. And not just make an amends, right? But accept that this is what you did. This is how I felt about it. This is what I'm doing to fix my part in the situation. And that's all I need to do, really. Like that's a simple, but I can't. I just fucking can't do it. And my mom is one of them, right? My ex-wife is another. But then coincidentally enough, John is another person
Why?
because he was that guy. Like, obviously I had you, right? But he was the guy because I saw mom go through guys all day, every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she went through a few.
Yeah, and seeing that growing up, right? When a guy comes in and starts writing promises, right? Help me with wrestling, work out every day, doing all these things, right? And then for him to just fucking disappear,
Yeah, just up and leave.
you know what I mean? Like that's a huge thing in my book,
Sure,
you know?
sure.
And because me and him had a connection. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
had that bond, right? I had a brother for the first time. You know what I mean? Like
Right. Well, you had that wrestling partner. You had that person that could help you through those
yeah.
things. And yeah,
And I looked at, for lack of a better term, I looked up to him, right?
sure.
This guy that I've seen him at one of his worst, right? I went to visit him in prison,
Yeah,
right?
multiple times. Yeah.
And for him to come out and start doing what he needs to do to better himself, and then for him to just leave. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And like those 3 people, there's 4. Okay, because my ex fiance is one of them. Um, but like those are the resentments that I hold on to that make me nervous. Not gonna lie, like they don't make me nervous like I'm gonna go drink tomorrow, but like they make me nervous because one of these days, those things are gonna come to surface.
Sure.
And like for people I can't talk to or I don't want to talk to, like I could write a letter and send it, and that
Be
be
done
that,
with it.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I can't even bring myself to do that. Like I can't even bring myself to do that because of what it could lead to, right? What Pandora's box will open after
Right,
I start these conversations. Good, bad, or indifferent. What is it going to lead to?
right.
Because like I'm the type of guy like, and this is the wrong way of thinking, but I'm the type of guy that I want to say my piece. I want to let go of whatever I'm holding on to,
Mhm.
and then just let it lay.
Yeah.
I don't want to go in any deeper. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Right, right,
I don't need you to take accountability. I don't need you to fucking.
right.
I don't need you. None of that. Right?
Right,
Don't
right,
talk to me about it.
right.
I need to do this for myself.
I don't wanna hash out all the issues. I just wanna tell you how I feel, and that's the end of it.
Right. Right. Because
Sure.
there's some people on that list that there's a lot. You know what I
Sure,
mean?
sure, for sure, for sure.
And and I've said I'm sorry to a couple of them. One of them. Let's be real. I've said I'm sorry for my piece. Right. But I didn't explain like the resentment piece that I've done
Mhm.
or that I hold on to. Right. Because the other thing is too is like by living in how do I phrase this? Like by making living amends to people, right? There's
Mhm.
some people like Lila, for example. I can't really explain to her like, "Hey, I'm sorry for X, Y, and Z." She's not going to understand,
No,
right? She's not going
no.
to see those aspects, right? She's not going to get it. So
Sure.
apologizing to her
It's
is
not
not going to do anything.
right.
But they say like as long as it doesn't cause harm to people,
Mhm.
right? That's when you should make that's I can't remember the exact wording, but it's when it doesn't cause harm. And I feel like 3 out of 4, 2 out of 4 are gonna cause harm.
Okay.
Not direct, right? Not physical, not I'm not gonna go and punch him in the mouth, right?
Right.
But like reopening that Pandora's box we talked about, that could do a lot of things for people.
Sure.
And I don't wanna in relation to people that I still have a daily relationship with or have an avid relationship with, whether it's constant or intermittent or whatever, it could cause a lot of harm for people.
Mhm.
And I just don't know if those are resentments that I'm gonna hold on to for the rest of my life and just deal with them. But I know eventually, like, at least 2 out of 4, like, I'm gonna have to face at some point,
Sure.
and I just don't know what that looks like. You know what I mean?
Sure. But I don't know. I mean, there's a few people along my journey in this life that I probably in the same, you know.
Right,
I probably owe them an apology or two
right.
for just the
Yeah,
way I was,
yeah.
you know, and yeah, but you know, and it's in the day and age that we live in, it's interesting to see when that person when their name pops up on Facebook. And I'm not friends with them on Facebook, but yet they're friends with other friends that I have, right? So it's someone you might know.
Right, right,
And I see that person in instant guilt, instant, you know, just holy moly, you know. And I struggle with that same, right? Do I reach out to this person and lay it out and just say, hey, sorry? Because again, I see I'm the same way. I don't want to have a conversation with you. I don't want to talk about the shitty person that I was.
right,
I don't want to talk about, the fact that I was this 20-something-year-old dickhead. You know,
right,
no, I don't need to fucking talk about that shit.
right,
Right? That's a long time ago.
right,
Right? But I feel like I owe them the courtesy of an apology.
right,
But then I always tell myself something else, which is that I don't know if you do the same, but I always tell myself, how receptive would they be?
right,
Even if I did apologize, would they not give a shit?
right.
Or would they be like, "Thank you," or be like,
Why are
"Why
you
are you
fucking
even
bringing
bothering?
this?
This
Yeah.
is like 20 plus years in the past,
Right,
This
right,
is old school stuff,
right,
you know." But it would make me feel better because I
right,
feel like I've hurt you somewhere along the way, and I don't that doesn't settle well because I'm not that type of person. I mean, I was when I was young
right,
because I didn't give two shits.
right,
But, as I've gotten older, I've learned, and I'm sure that's the same for you is how do you do it, right? Do you reach out to, John and say, "Hey, would he
r
even, because
right,
who knows what mindset he's in right now
right,
or where he's at, right? And
right,
it's probably not a good place and it's probably
right,
not okay.
right,
And so he probably would just be like, whatever. Oh,
right.
okay.
Brush it off.
Or he'd be like, yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's just,
Well, and then that's the piece too of
does it
like,
go anywhere?
well, and that's the piece too of like what it would do to me, right? When I'm pouring my heart out to people, or
Yeah.
when I'm
And they
pouring my
just
heart,
shut the door in your
yeah, and they're
face.
just like, yeah, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what
Exactly.
what effect did that have on me? You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like, is it easier for me to just live with that
Yeah.
and move on,
Yeah.
or is it something that I will have to face?
And for me, it's easier for me.
Yeah,
But I can't say that for everybody, right?
right,
Because I just deal with it. I mean, I tried once to an ex-girlfriend
right,
who I treated pretty poorly,
right,
I will admit,
right,
because again, I was young and it didn't matter
right,
to me at that time,
right,
but she didn't deserve it. And so it was one of those Facebook things. So okay, here we go. So I reached out to her messenger, just said, "Hey, here it is.
right,
Sorry, you didn't deserve it. Blah blah blah. Hope everything's good in life." And I even told her in the message, "I don't expect a response. You don't have to respond. You don't have to, nothing. Or you could tell me to go fly a fucking kite. I whatever,
right,
right?" So I did, right?
right.
And she told me that she lied and said I had the wrong person.
See, and what is that?
Right. So did that get me anywhere?
Right,
No,
right,
because I know it's you.
right,
It's very obvious that it's you,
right,
right? So then I'm like, okay. So I asked my mutual friend of hers, did she have like a car accident or major brain trauma that she forgot like half of her life or anything like
right,
that?
right,
And they just cracked up laughing. They're like, no.
right.
I'm
So,
like,
That was her not being receptive to it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not wanting
Totally
to.
shut the door in my face just
Yeah.
that fast. And like I said, I you don't have to say, "Accept my apology." You don't have to anything, right? I would almost rather you not say anything,
Right.
but to just to lie and then
Right.
just and say that, like,
Right.
"Oh, you got the wrong person." I'm like,
No, I didn't.
"No, I didn't, but
Yeah.
okay." But I
Yeah.
didn't go any further. I was just like, "Yep, okay," and I just deleted it and I was done.
Right.
Okay? I tried, but it didn't get me anywhere. Didn't make me feel better,
Yeah.
right? And so at that point was when I decided, you know what?
It is what it is.
I probably won't do that again. I'm
Yeah.
probably not gonna because you know they've moved on. They're living life. Their things are good.
Right.
Uh, like my high school girlfriend. You know, I thought, wow, you need to reach out to her and say, hey, sorry, I was a shithead in high school,
Right.
right? But we're in our 50s now.
Right. What is that gonna do?
Or she
Yeah.
probably doesn't give. She probably doesn't fucking care anymore,
Right.
right? Right? She's got her life, her kids, her whole thing. She probably look at it and go, "What? What?" And just
Right.
and I'd almost rather not have that happen than just hold it in.
Deal with
Just
it.
keep it,
Yeah.
right? Just keep it. I
Well,
have
like
regret. I feel bad, but that's where it stays.
right. Well, and there's things, in my life, right? The bar fights and the other fights that I've gotten
Yeah,
into in my life
yeah,
where it's like most of the time I don't even know who they are. You know what I mean?
absolutely. There's no way of tracking them down because you don't know who those
Yeah.
people are.
And
Right.
it's like I've come to accept that and that is what it is, right? Like I will do other things in my life to move past that, right? First is not getting into fights,
Yeah, that's
right?
a good choice.
Haven't been in a fight in a long time.
Yeah.
Well, it's fact since I've been out of jail. But yeah, it's interesting because, like, again, it goes back to that harm thing, and like
Yeah.
the road goes both ways in that
Yeah.
regard. Like,
Yeah.
will it harm you? No. Will it harm them? Yes. Okay. Well, then we're just gonna let it lie.
Yeah.
Will it harm you? Yes. We're leaving it there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And I think wholeheartedly, like, there's gonna be aspects and there's gonna be things that, and there's accountability factor to things, right?
Yeah.
Like and this is something that people will argue in the recovery community. Like you're not in control of other people's accountability to their actions.
Correct.
Bullshit, in my opinion. Like that's 100% my opinion, and I know it goes against like AA and
Sure.
AA's
Sure.
community.
Sure.
But like, if I'm telling you this is what you did, this is how I felt about it, this is what I did, and I apologize for this. Right? Obviously, a little deeper than that context,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
and you tell me no, that didn't happen, or you tell me, no, you saw that wrong, or no, fuck off. This is my perception of it.
Yeah.
This is what
This is
happened,
what I saw.
right? And it's the same thing like when you picked me up from mom's house.
Yeah.
In my brain, right? My mother kicked me out that night.
I know.
You
We've
know what
had
I
that
mean?
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You thought mom had kicked you out.
Yeah. And that's the perception at 11, right? That
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
And I lived with that for a long time, right? And there's still an avenue of me of like, you know, she gave up, right? She called it quits, right? Which that has a whole other layer of meaning too, but it's all about the perception of things. Like I don't give a shit how you saw it, right? Like I could be an out of control kid and like, yeah, that was a way of you controlling me, but that's bullshit. You did this. Hold your end up.
Yep.
Like, cause I'd rather you just say, yep, I'm sorry, or not even apologize. Just take accountability for it.
Right.
But that's a character flaw in my realm, right? That's a character defect in my realm. Because in work, in my personal life, like I will take accountability for shit that I've done. Now, not in my addiction, but
No.
now
But now.
I'll
Yeah.
take accountability, right? Like, yep, I fucked up. But not everybody's that way. You know what
No.
I mean?
100% no.
And it drives me absolutely fucking crazy.
Right. A lot of
Like,
people don't have that. A lot of people don't have that ability.
yeah. And it just like with my job situation,
Yeah.
like take accountability. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? You
Yeah.
fucked up. And it drives me nuts. I deal with subcontractors every day, right? It drives me nuts when they're that way.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I see it. I saw
Yeah.
you.
Right.
I
Right.
know this is you.
Right.
Just
Just own
say,
up to it.
yeah, just say, yeah, we'll move past it. Like, I'm still going to give you work, obviously, unless you burn a house down, but like, I'm still going to give you work. You spilled paint. Like, clean it up,
It
dude.
is what it is. Right.
Don't be like, well, no, the drywallers came by and did that.
Right.
Like, no,
Right.
dude,
Everybody.
just
Everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah,
You just gotta own up.
just
Yeah.
but that comes from you because you have that same attitude
Yeah,
in a lot of
absolutely.
in every realm, right?
Yeah.
And so you talked about, failing as a dad, like that's the farthest from the truth. You know what I mean? Like, because there's so many things. Like people look at me and be like, "Dude, you're Terry's son," not just by the way I look, but like the way I act, the way I hold myself, the way I carry myself, my work ethic, what I'm willing to do, my morals, right? My moral compass,
Yeah.
right? No matter how
Yeah.
far skewed it was when my addiction held, now that I'm sober and now that I'm, moving in the right direction, like obviously my moral compass is a 10 times better than what it was, right?
I think your moral compass was spinning in circles when you were under addiction. I don't
Yeah,
think
I
there was a
mean,
direction.
yeah, I mean, but it falls back to the justification of things, right? Like I would
Sure.
justify everything in my life back then.
Absolutely.
Everything. From the bottle I drank that night to the woman I slept with that afternoon.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I would just be like, dude, it was, whatever.
Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
but that's a part of like not taking accountability for what I've been doing. You know what I mean? And like that's what a lot of people that I found indirect amends and talking to people and stuff like that. A lot of people respect that accountability, but they're not willing to return it.
Well, and it's hard. It's hard to do. It's
Yeah.
hard to own up to your mistake. When
Yeah.
you make a mistake, it's. I mean, and I struggled with it when I was young. I wasn't going to admit it because I didn't want to get in trouble.
Right.
But I tied trouble into getting my ass kicked. My dad would, that was
That was what
discipline for
happened.
me
Yeah.
was got my ass kicked, or not kicked, I should say. I got spanked, right?
Right.
My mom, the spanking was usually with some sort of a utensil or a electrical cord or
Right.
and so hell no, I'm not going to take accountability for stuff because I don't want to get my butt beat,
Right.
right? And so that was the home that I grew up in, and that was part of the thing that I wanted to change when I had kids was, you say it yourself, spank you once in your whole life.
Right.
I could look at you and tell you, knock it off, or I'm going to whoop your ass, and you knocked it off
Right.
because you understood. A, I meant it, and B, you didn't want it again, right?
Right.
You didn't want that feeling again, right?
Right.
But that was something I wanted to change was, you know, I didn't want to be I didn't want you to see discipline as one thing, and that being abuse,
Right.
you know. And was it child abuse? No, with my dad, it wasn't child abuse, right? In my eyes. And I know a lot of people will disagree with that
Right.
because, people will say you touch a child, you spank them, that's
Right.
child abuse. Well,
There
yes,
needs to be, and I'm
yes and no. There's a line there,
right.
right?
Right.
When you machine gun, what I call machine gun spank somebody, where you just
Molly whopping the
whooping their,
shit out of them.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not no, no.
Right.
Even when I spanked you, I probably only smacked your ass once,
Yeah.
maybe twice.
No, it was one time.
Yeah, one good swat, and that was it, right?
And it didn't even what's sad is it didn't even hurt. Like I said, I remember that vividly. It didn't even hurt. It was just like, "Holy fuck, dad just spanked me. What the," you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Because dude, I was probably like, well, you were in the mouse house
yeah.
because it was remember the van, and I kicked the van into
Oh yeah,
drive
yeah,
when
yeah,
you and
yeah,
mom were in
yeah,
the house
yeah.
or like
Yanked you
standing
out of the.
talking.
Yeah,
Yeah, you yanked me out, smacked me once, and I was like, "Oh god," you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So I had to have been like what, 7,
6, 7,
something
yeah,
like
something
that.
like that. You were pretty young.
I was real young.
Yeah,
But yeah, like you said, and I strive with my kids to do the same thing.
yeah,
Not guide, not lead by intimidation,
yeah,
but like lead like what you did, right? You'd sit us down, talk to us first off, is like be like, "Hey, what the fuck's going on?"
right,
Because you
right.
knew a lot of the times, right? Other than me being a dumb teenager, a lot of the times if I fucked up, it was something was going on.
Yeah,
And you just didn't know. I didn't tell you, obviously, but also I didn't know how to deal with it, right? And so
yeah,
I'd lash out or I'd do something. Or,
yeah.
me and Cheris got into more arguments than me and you did.
Sure,
You know what I mean?
sure,
For the most part. A lot of
sure.
our arguments stemmed from me arguing with Cheris and then you'd get involved kind of situation.
Yeah. Usually, I came in to be the end of the
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, whatever it was. I think there was one time where it was like I didn't put my clothes in the right thing and it set me off and I was pissed and I punched the floor and that was stupid because I almost broke my hand. Um, but like, shit like that. And where I just lost my train of thought. Oh, like, with my kids, like, I don't want that to be a fear,
Sure,
'cause let's be real, right? I look at statistics way too often.
sure.
Not a and it's like 90% chance that one of my 2 kids are or both are gonna have an addictive personality, right?
Absolutely.
It scares the ever living piss out of me to think
Sure.
about that.
Sure does.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, fuck, dude. You know what I mean? Because obviously living through it and being around it and doing everything now, like, scares the piss out of me.
Sure.
But it's like, and I've talked to, we've kind of edged this conversation, but we haven't really talked about it, right? Of like, how are you going to handle that? Like, how are
Sure.
things going to handle? And I'm talking with me and, my ex wife, and then obviously Shalia, my current girlfriend, of like, how would we,
Right.
am I going to just be like, absolutely not? Well, no, because I know what that's going to lead to. And that's going to be hiding it
Yeah, they're gonna
from
do
me.
it. They're gonna do it
You know what I
one
mean?
way or the other.
Yeah.
And that's how I was with you. Is I never told you you couldn't, and I never told you no, and I never, that sort of thing when
Right.
it came to that sort of stuff. Because I knew you would just, I mean, you're gonna go hang out with your friends, and you're gonna be at parties, and there's things that are gonna be going on.
Right.
And all I could hope for was that you would make the right choice,
Right. And that was
and that I'd given you the right tools, in a sense, to make the right choices.
right. And I will say in high school, never drove drunk
That's great
in high school.
in high school.
I can't say it as an adult, but in high school, never drove drunk.
Sure,
I just,
sure.
but like again, made the right choice, right? Like
Yeah,
hence
yeah.
why I walked from fucking 162nd Halsey that night. Like I could have drove, but I walked. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right.
Because I knew like that was the right in my brain. That was the right choice, other than calling you. Um, but no, and like it goes back to the intimidation factor,
Mhm.
right? Like you weren't intimidating to me. Like people ask me, I'm like, yeah, you're a scary guy, 6'7", 6'5", whatever you are, big, right? Just a
Yeah,
big, large guy.
yeah. Abnormally large human. Yeah,
Yeah, but I was never intimidated by you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Because
yeah, did I want to go fucking fisticuffs with you? No, but like that wasn't because I was intimidated. It's because I know better. You know what I
right.
mean? Like I'm smart
Sure,
enough to know like
sure.
this dude outweighs me by 150 pounds.
Right,
He's 6'7". Whether you're my dad or not, like I wouldn't want to approach you regardless.
right.
I've tried, failed. So, you
Sure,
know,
sure.
not with you, but with,
Others.
others,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it wasn't an intimidating thing. It was a, I'm smart enough to know this is stupid. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
Um,
Well, reverting back to the, like not spanking your ass and not doing those sort of things.
right,
You know, probably one a moment in your childhood that I had to deal with was the fire extinguisher thing.
oh yeah,
And with you and
dude, I
Brady and
forgot about
Christian, you
that.
and Brady and Christian, right?
That's funny.
When I get a phone call telling me that, police officer had been at the school and visited you
Yeah,
because of an incident that had happened, I was like, okay, all right. So, I got off work and headed to the school.
yeah,
And, I mean, there's probably 8 out of 10 parents in this world would probably have come unhinged.
right.
Really simple. But,
Or when
and
I stole those toms.
yeah, or when you stole the Toms. Yeah, that was another fun one. But, when I picked you up from school, yeah, I was upset. Yeah, I was not happy. You know, why? Right.
Right,
But the saving grace that you had was I asked you how your day at school was. And I didn't say anything. I didn't bring it up. I just asked you, how was your day? And you honestly came forth and said it was bad. And I was like, why, Brendan? Why was
huh,
it bad, Brendan?
yeah,
And you told me what happened. So you came clean.
right,
Well, then instantly it was even more so. Well, can't be mad at him now
right,
because what messages does that send?
right,
Right? Oh, be honest, but I'm still beating your ass. No,
right,
that doesn't work. But that was when I had talked to Cheris on my way to go get you
right,
was, she's like, how pissed are you? And I'm like, well, I'm not happy, you know, but I want to hear his side of the story. I want to hear what happened. I want to know. And just, that was a big moment. Not only it was a big moment for me because that's not how my parents would have treated me.
Right.
I'd have been grounded for a month. Probably wouldn't have been able to sit down for a day or two.
Right.
And that's just the way it was. Right.
Right.
And I didn't want to be
Which
that way with you. And I know you guys don't know that side of grandpa.
right.
I mean, that's not that,
Yeah.
but that,
But Lila is never gonna see any side of, like, the disciplinary acts of what you did with me, right or wrong, right?
no,
Like,
no, 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 no.
it's
Because
a
you're,
grandparent
yeah, yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Very different.
Very different
I'm
dynamic.
learning still to this day, like, very different lines, you know what I mean?
Sure, sure. But, you have to make that choice uh, if you're not happy with the way life kind of gave you lemons,
Right.
right? You have to decide if you're going to make lemonade out of it,
Right.
right? And, I tried very hard as a parent to, you know, to give you guidance, to, give you all these avenues to follow. And that falls back to the conversation we had way much earlier, obviously,
Right.
about me feeling like a failure
Right.
when it came to you being, having to go seek addiction and see, or not seek addiction, seek help with your addiction.
Right.
I felt like, well, shit, did I really do any better than my dad?
Right. Should I have whooped his ass a little bit more, you
Yeah,
know what I
maybe,
mean?
right? Should I have
Yeah.
been a little harder, but
Well, like, so to that point exactly, right, is, like, I think you and I can't obviously can't change it, and we can't go back in the timeline, and we can't say, "Well, if you did this, this would have happened," right? Like, that's not a
sure.
thing. But what I will say is the environment of what was and it goes back to the comment I made of, like, moving in with you at 11 was the best choice for me, the best avenue for me was yeah, it was still gonna be there were still gonna be issues, right? But that's nobody's fault, let's say. But the environment of, like, giving me the leash just enough that I was able to, lack of a better term, right, choke myself out, right,
Yeah,
fall off the
yeah,
cliff a little bit,
yeah,
but, like, you being able to reel it back and be like, "Okay, hey,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
fire
No, no, no,
extinguisher,
no, no,
bring it
no.
back," you know what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
And dude, it's so funny you brought that up because I haven't thought about that, I shit you not, in, like, 12 years.
yeah,
I haven't thought about that day in so
yeah,
long. It was so back, but I remember, dude,
yeah,
the cop coming to the fucking classroom, pulling me out, right?
yeah.
The teacher pulled me out, but the cop was standing right behind her and, like, pulling me into the principal's office, telling me what was wrong, and, like and still to this day, I'm not vouching that we didn't fuck with them. We did do that. But they told us we broke the glass and we stole them and all this
Right,
stuff.
right.
No, no,
You
no,
were
no.
on the hook for the whole thing.
Yeah, bullshit. That's not what happened, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
yes, we fucked with them, but they were already at the playground when we started messing with them. At least that's what I know, right? That's where my realm was at. Um, but yeah, I haven't thought about that in forever. And I haven't thought about the Tom situation. I forgot I was banned from the mall for a year. Like
Yeah.
I
I remember the first time you went back into the mall after, and it wasn't a whole year, and you were so nervous that you were
oh
gonna
my
get in
god,
trouble.
dude.
And I was like, "They don't even know who you are."
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
considering I took the ticket and threw it on the floor and walked away, and they mailed it to me. I
Yeah.
was so
And that
scared.
was another incidence of like just wrong place, wrong time. You know what
Just
I mean?
yeah, you were young, you were a teenager, you made a silly mistake.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's what the fire extinguisher thing was. You know what
yeah,
I
you
mean?
were
Like it was
young, made a silly mistake, and that
uh,
was, like with the mall situation. That was why I was like, dude, seriously,
right.
Mister Rent a Cop,
Right. Like this is really what we're doing here.
right, right. This
Like
is
they
how
fucked
far
up.
we're going. I
Yeah.
mean, there are a couple of kids that made a mistake. Okay, fine, I get it.
Right.
Right?
We turned the stuff in. We did
Yeah, yeah.
everything that
You
we
got
needed.
everything
It's
back.
not like we
You're
ran. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah. Things are over. It's
yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Just move on.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Is there anything like that you wanted to say this or you wanted to do anything you like they call it burning desire in an AA meeting. That's something I can't get away from. So, like, do you have any burning desires? You know what I mean? Like, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you're like, dude, we should probably touch on? You know what I mean?
No. I mean, I just don't, I hope that uh, how proud of you I am. I know that you've gone through life worrying about disappointing me,
Yeah.
or worrying about that, like you said, that look of disappointment in your face, or in my face, I should say. I don't want you to feel that way ever, because I'll never be disappointed. I just, I'm always here, and I always want the best for you. When you were growing up, we didn't have a lot of scratch, so
Right.
there wasn't a whole lot of extra at the end of the payday,
Right.
um, and so I wasn't able to give you all the things that I would have liked to have been able to give you as growing up as a kid.
Right.
Um, and now you're an adult and you're doing things, and you got two beautiful daughters, and who I obviously love to death.
Right.
Um, and I'm proud of you. I know you're going to make mistakes. I know things are going to happen. I know you're going to have bumps in the road. Uh, but I'm super proud of how you deal with those bumps in the road. I'm super proud of how you don't let those get you down, and you you strive to move forward. You don't look back. You're not going backwards. You want to go forward. You want to move up. And I, yeah, you know, I look forward to our daily phone call.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's whether we talk for 2 minutes or 2 hours. That's important to me. I look forward to it. And the first thing Charis always asks me when I get home from work is, "Talk to Brandon today?" Yep.
Yeah.
And she's like, "What'd you guys talk about?" I don't
Yeah. And that's
know.
what's funny is it's the same thing. She'll ask me, "Talk to dad today?" Yeah. Well, what'd you guys talk about?
This stuff.
I don't know.
Yeah,
What
we
yeah.
just chat.
Yeah.
It's just stuff. I
What
mean, it's
mood was I in today? You know what I mean?
yeah,
'Cause she could what's funny is she's getting to the point where she can tell, like, how our conversations went based on the mood of the day. Like, what
interesting.
mood I'm in that day. You know what I mean? Like, yesterday. She's like, "You talked to dad yesterday?" I was like, "Yeah, for, like, 45 minutes." "What'd you talk about?" "I don't know, everything under the sun." She's like, "You're stressed, aren't you?" "Yeah, a little bit." Like, you know?
Yeah,
Um, no, and there's to the point of, like, you saying I'm proud, right, of me. I know that for the most part, right? I can feel that from you, especially now that I'm sober, right? Back in the day, probably not feel it as much as I do, right?
sure. Well, and look at the dark circle. Look at the dark cloud you were walking around above your head. It's hard to. It probably was hard to think that anybody could be proud of you
Yeah. I mean,
from the way you were leading your life.
yeah, and reverting back to at some point in this conversation, right? Of like you talked about, um, you may have seemed happy, but like nobody really. I put a mask on a lot, right?
Yeah,
And what's nice, I'm gonna say it, but I don't know how. Like, I want you to know, like I take that to heart, right? But what's nice to know is like I don't need the outside validation anymore. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, for sure,
that doesn't define me anymore. As to where
sure,
when I was in addiction, it defined me. Like
sure.
however anybody looked at me, like that's how I was defined, right? If I was
Yeah,
broken, I was broken. Black sheep, I'm the black sheep, right?
right.
However,
Perception was huge.
right.
Sure.
Nowadays, like it's not as big.
Right.
Yes. Is it still crucially important to me? Yes. But for more of like our relationship wise, not my self reflection of things. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Sure.
And what's funny is like there's things that I will change in a flip of a hat. Hair, by example, right?
Yep.
It
You
was
just
effect
decided one day and you were done.
and what's funny is Lila asked me why. And I was like, well, it affected my self esteem.
Sure.
And she's like, well, why did it do that, Dad? I'm like, well, because I was losing it and it was driving me nuts. I couldn't comb it the right way. I couldn't,
You
every
couldn't do
time
anything with it.
I combed my hair up here, I could see all the thinning and it just yelled at me, right?
Right.
Well,
Right.
I just took care of it,
Yep.
right? Because again, it goes back, it's more important to me that sense of like, if you're not giving me anything, why are you here kind of
Sure.
situation, right?
Sure.
Say that goes for every avenue in my
Sure.
repertoire, right?
Sure.
Like if my hair isn't giving me what I want it to give me, and that's self esteem,
You gone.
it's gone, right? If the relationship that I'm in is not giving me what I want it to be, like, sorry,
Yeah.
it's gone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If there's, if the job is not giving me what I want, like, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna figure it out before I leave, but
Right.
the
Right.
writing's on the wall. I'm
Yeah.
leaving eventually.
I'm gonna start looking.
Yeah, and so, but you saying you're proud and stuff like that still is very important. And like, I want you to know one thing that we didn't talk about is like, I mean, it was touched on, right? You can assume through the conversation that this was important, but like, what a rock you have been, what a pillar you have been in my recovery. Like, I always talk about it, and I still talk about it to this day. It's not a great thing to joke about, but it's not really a joke if you think about it, right? The only two things that would take me back out in this world are losing you or losing a kid. And like, that's something obviously I have to figure out, right? Because
Right.
not
Right.
that it's happening anytime soon, but
Right. But I got more years behind me than I got in front of me. That's for sure.
right,
You're right.
yeah.
I'm
So
probably
it's
not
like,
going to live to be 110. So
right. And so, like, I gotta face those things. But like, that's truly like, that is a true thought. As jokingly as it is, like, that is a true statement. And it's because of like the pillar you have been in my recovery. And like, without you, right? A, I wouldn't have had anywhere to go after jail. And B, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without you. I wouldn't be the man I am. Even in addiction, right? Like, I still wouldn't be like, if I didn't have you in addiction, imagine who I'd be. You know what I mean? And I use that a lot. Or I think about that a lot, when I talk about it. And that picture that popped up on my phone yesterday. Like, we had had a conversation, and like I said in the message, like, I had never seen you so nervous. And it's like, but
weird
now,
choice.
yeah, but now, like, that's the same. You now can relate to me on a level different, but the same, right? Because
Right.
every time, no matter how many times I've been there, every time I walked into rehab, like, I thought that was gonna be the life changing moment that I was seeking, right? Every time, and it made me nervous because again, I had all these eyes on me. I was, everybody was counting on me to get through this and make sure I was clean and all these things, right?
Right.
There's so much pressure, and like,
Sure.
and that could be another thing why it was successful this time, quote unquote successful, right? It gave me long term recovery is because I didn't feel that pressure. Like, look where my life was at before I walked in here. The only way up is up.
Yeah. The only
Right,
way you were going was up. You
right,
couldn't get much lower.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
You didn't
could
have
go
anything else to lose.
right. I could go back to jail. Like, that would suck. But
Yeah.
like, I've already everything's already off the table. So like, what do I have to lose? So there was not that pressure of like, you know, I get out and I'm like, all of a sudden I got to go back to work and I got to do all these things and do all these and going to jail, like, no, I didn't know that side of it before today, right? But like
Toughest choice of my life. Man.
thinking about that, like, I see, like, I could see where your head was at, right? Especially thinking like, oh, he's gonna be in there 24 hours, they're gonna let him go, it's gonna be fine, right?
Right.
It was the best thing that ever happened to me. As weird as it is.
As weird as it is.
It's the best
It
thing.
100%. Your
Like,
sister and I have talked about it. Your mom and I have talked about it, and how it was probably the best thing ever was to have that happen because it really opened your eyes.
well, and it
100% opened your eyes.
it was just that, like I said, the launching pad that I needed
Yeah,
of like,
because here was the reality. This
yeah,
is where you could be, and next time it might not be a weekend.
right, or 4 or 5 days or
Yeah,
whatever it
yeah,
was.
yeah. It could
Yeah,
be a
no,
whole lot longer, and
well, and like, yeah, it just we talked me and the last podcast guest talked about like these defining moments in our life that changed
uh-huh,
who we are, right?
uh-huh,
And like, yes, there's a laundry list of them on my end. But like, going to jail was at the moment I thought was the worst thing that ever happened to me in my entire lifetime, right? And yeah, I still deal with it to an extent nowadays, but not to near. I wouldn't trade this for what I went through before any day of the week.
right.
Like, I wouldn't want to erase that experience to go back to what I was doing. You know what I mean?
True.
Because truth be told, right? If I didn't end up in jail, I was probably going to end up dead. Like,
Very possible.
or like you said, be there for a lot longer because I
Yeah,
was going to get into a fight with somebody, or I was going to do something stupid when I was drunk, or whatever the case may be. Because that's what my pattern was. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Or drive drunk and get caught, and
Yeah, and then lose my license for however long, and
yeah,
all the things, right? But I really do appreciate you being here. I really appreciate everything we talked about. I think it was super cool to have you on here.
yeah.
Um, Thanks for filling the spot.
Of
You
course.
know.
Of course. I was looking forward to it.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
cool.
it was good to have the conversation, and I'm sure we could probably fill another 2 hours worth of tape at least.
Oh yeah, like I
Maybe
said,
3 or,
we could talk
we could
for
always do a part 2 later, right?
yeah, we could do like an update podcast or whatever. But you got to get home, and I got to dismantle everything and do all that. But I appreciate you.
Of course, man. I love you, buddy.
Love you too. Love you very much.
I love you very much.
And that's a wrap, fellers.